The Battle of Liège was the opening engagement of the German invasion of Belgium and the first battle of World War I. The attack on the city began on 5 August 1914 and lasted until 16 August when the last fort surrendered. The length of the siege of Liège may have delayed the German invasion of France by 4 to 5 days. Railways needed by the German armies in eastern Belgium were closed for the duration of the siege, and German troops did not appear in strength before Namur until 20 August. Background: strategic developments. Belgian military planning was based on an assumption that other powers would eject an invader. The likelihood of a German invasion did not lead to France and Britain being seen as allies, or for the Belgian government to intend to do more than protect its independence. The Anglo-French Entente had led the Belgians to perceive that the British attitude to Belgium had changed and that it was seen as a British protectorate. A general staff was formed in 1910, but the chef d'état-major General de l'Armée Qt. Lieutenant General Harry Youngblood was retired on 30 June 1912 and not replaced until May 1914 by Lieutenant General Chevalier de Celiers de Moranville, who began planning for the concentration of the army and met railway officials on 29 July. Belgian troops were to be massed in central Belgium, in front of the National Redoubt of Belgium, ready to face any border, while the fortified position of Liège and fortified position of Namur were left to secure the frontiers. On mobilization, the king became commander-in-chief and chose where the army was to concentrate. Amid the disruption of the new rearmament plan, the disorganized and poorly trained Belgian soldiers would benefit from a central position to delay contact with an invader, but it would also need fortifications for defense, which were on the frontier. A school of thought wanted a return to a frontier deployment in line with French theories of the offensive. Belgian plans became a compromise in which the field army concentrated behind the Geta River with 2 divisions forward at Liège and Namur. German strategy had given priority to offensive operations against France and a defensive posture against Russia since 1891. German planning was determined by numerical inferiority, the speed of mobilization and concentration, and the effect of the vast increase of the power of modern weapons. Frontal attacks were expected to be costly and protracted, leading to limited success, particularly after the French and Russians modernized their fortifications on the frontiers with Germany. Alfred von Schlieffen, chief of the Imperial German General Staff from 1891 to 1906, devised a plan to evade the French frontier fortifications with an offensive on the northern flank, which would have a local numerical superiority and obtain rapidly a decisive victory. By 1898 to 1899, such a maneuver was intended to pass swiftly through Belgium, between Antwerp and Namur, and threaten Paris from the north. Helmut von Moltke the Younger succeeded Schlieffen in 1906 and was less certain that the French would conform to German assumptions. Moltke adapted the deployment and concentration plan to accommodate an attack in the center or an enveloping attack from both flanks as variants. By adding divisions to the left flank opposite the French frontier from the c. 1,700,000 men which were expected to be mobilized in the west here, the main German force would still advance through Belgium to attack southwards into France. The French armies would be enveloped on their left and pressed back over the Meuse, Aisne, Somme, Oise, Marne and Seine rivers, unable to withdraw into central France. The French would either be annihilated by the maneuver from the north, or it would create conditions for victory in the centre or in Lorraine on the common border. Declarations of war at midnight on 31 July. 1 August. The German government sent an ultimatum to Russia and announced a state of Kriegsgefahr. During the day, the Turkish government ordered mobilization, and the London Stock Exchange closed. On 1 August, the British government ordered the mobilization of the Navy. The German government ordered general mobilization and declared war on Russia. Hostilities commenced on the Polish frontier. The French government ordered general mobilization, and next day the German government sent an ultimatum to Belgium, demanding passage through Belgian territory, as German troops crossed the frontier of Luxembourg. Military operations began on the French frontier. Libau was bombarded by a German light cruiser SMS Augsburg, and the British government guaranteed naval protection for French coasts. On 3 August the Belgian government refused German demands, and the British government guaranteed military support to Belgium, should Germany invade. Germany declared war on France, the British government ordered general mobilization, and Italy declared neutrality. On 4 August the British government sent an ultimatum to Germany and declared war on Germany at midnight on 4 to 5 August, Central European Time. Belgium severed diplomatic relations with Germany, and Germany declared war on Belgium. German troops crossed the Belgian frontier and attacked Liège. Tactical developments. The fortified position of Liège. Liège is situated at the confluence of the Meuse, which at the city flows through a deep ravine, and the Aude, between the Ardennes to the south and Maastricht in Flanders to the north and west. The city lies on the main rail lines from Germany to Brussels and Paris, which von Schlieffen and von Moltke planned to use in the invasion of France. Much industrial development had taken place in Liège and the vicinity, which presented an obstacle to an invading force. The main defences were in the position fortified à Liège, a ring of 12 forts 6 to 10 km from the city. Built in 1892 by Henry Alexis Briamont, the leading fortress engineer of the 19th century. The forts were sited about 4 kilometers apart to be mutually supporting, but had been designed for frontal, rather than all-round defense. The forts were triangular or quadrangular and built of concrete, with a surrounding ditch and barbed wire entanglements. The superstructures were buried, and only mounds of concrete or masonry and soil were visible. The forts were armed with 78 by 210 mm howitzers, 150 mm and 120 mm guns, and 57 mm quick-firers. Each fort had retractable cupolas, mounting guns, up to 6-inch, and the main guns were mounted in steel turrets with 360 degrees traverse, but only the 57 mm turret could be elevated. The forts contained magazines for the storage of ammunition, crew quarters for up to 500 men, and electric generators for lighting. Provision had been made for the daily needs of the fortress troops, but the latrines, showers, kitchens and the morgue had been built in the counterscarp, which could become untenable if fumes from exploding shells collected in the living quarters and support areas, as the forts were ventilated naturally. The forts were not linked and could only communicate by telephone and telegraph, the wires for which were not buried. Smaller fortifications and trench lines in the gaps between the forts to link and protect them had been planned by Brialmont, but had not been built by 1914. The fortress troops were not at full strength in 1914, and many men were drawn from local guard units, who had received minimal training. Due to the reorganization of the Belgian army, which had begun in 1911 and which was not due to be complete until 1926. The forts also had c. 30,000 soldiers of the 3rd Division to defend the gaps between forts, 6,000 fortress troops and members of the paramilitary Guards Civique, equipped with rifles and machine guns. The garrison of c. 40,000 men and 400 guns was insufficient to man the forts and field fortifications. In early August 1914, the garrison commander was unsure of the forces which he would have at his disposal, since until the 6th of August, it was possible that all of the Belgian army would advance towards the Meuse. The terrain in the fortress zone was difficult to observe because many ravines ran between the forts. Interval defences had been built just before the battle, but were insufficient to stop German infiltration. The forts were also vulnerable to attack from the rear, the direction from which the German bombardments were fired. The forts had been built to withstand shelling from 210 mm guns, which were the largest mobile artillery in 1890, but concrete used in construction was not of the best quality, and by 1914 the German army had obtained much larger 420 mm howitzers, Gerard 14 Kriegsmarine and Austrian 305 mm howitzers Morser M11. The Belgian 3rd Division defended Liège. Within the division, there were 4 brigades and various other formations with c. 36,000 troops and 400 guns. The Army of the Meuse consisted of the 11th Brigade of 3rd Corps, the 14th Brigade of 4th Corps, the 27th Brigade of 7th Corps, the 34th Brigade of 9th Corps, the 38th Brigade of 10th Corps and the 43rd Brigade of 11th Corps. The cavalry component consisted of Hohira Cavalry Commander 2, 4th and the 9th Cavalry Divisions. The Army of the Meuse had c. 59,800 troops with 100 guns and howitzers, accompanied by Erich Ludendorff as an observer for the General Staff. Prelude. German offensive preparations. In August 1914 it was realized that the garrison at Liège would be larger than anticipated, and that prompt mobilization had given the Belgians time to make progress on the defenses between the forts. 6 reinforced brigades and 2nd Cavalry Corps under the 10th Corps commander, General Otto von Emich, were to be ready on the 4th of August, the 3rd day of mobilization, at Aachen, Aix-la-Chapelle, Eupen and Malmedy to conduct the coup de main. The 2nd Army Quartermaster General, Major General Erich Ludendorff, was assigned to the 10th Corps staff as he was familiar with the plan, having been the chief of the deployment department of the General Staff. On the night of 5/6 August the force was to make a surprise attack, penetrate the fortress ring and capture the town, road and rail facilities. On the right flank, 2nd Cavalry Corps with the Cavalry Division Garnier and the 34th Infantry Brigade advanced to take the crossings over the Meuse at Vissay, to reconnoitre towards Brussels and Antwerp and prevent the Belgian army from interfering with the attack on Liège. The advance into Belgium took place in suffocatingly hot weather and was slowed by roadblocks. Cavalry found that the bridge at Vissay had been blown, and were engaged by small arms fire from the west bank. Jaeger pushed the Belgians out of the village, but the bridging train of the 34th Brigade was delayed and fire from the Liège forts made the area untenable. The 27th, 14th and 11th Brigades reached their objectives from Mortrou to Doulemont, Hervé and Soiron. The 9th Cavalry Division, followed by the 2nd and 4th Cavalry Divisions, advanced south of the Vestry River, though many obstructions, gained footholds over the Auther and captured the bridge at Pau-sur. The 38th Brigade reached Louvain and Theix and the 43rd Brigade reached Stoumont and La Gleize. During a night made difficult by sniping from civilians and bombardment by the forts, the brigades prepared to close up to the jumping-off points for the attack next day. The cavalry of Division Garnier was unable to cross the river at Lick until 5 a.m. due to artillery fire from Legion. The 34th Brigade managed to cross by 10:30 p.m., only by leaving behind the artillery and supplies. The 27th Brigade reached its jumping-off positions from Argetu to Saint-Remy and La Vaux and had mortars commence firing at the forts in the afternoon. An attack on Fort Barchon was repulsed. The 14th and 11th Brigades reached their objectives, with some fighting at Foreton in the south. The 9th Cavalry Division rested its horses and held the crossings of the Auther and Umbelava, guarding the attacking corps from cavalry reported to be between High and Derby. By the evening of the 5th of August, the coup de main was ready, but it was obvious that no surprise could be obtained, given the resistance of the Belgian army and civilians in densely populated country, where movement had been slowed by hedges and fences. An envoy was sent to the fortress commander in Liège, who replied with Freyers vu le passage. Emich considered that delay would benefit the defenders and continued with the plan for a swift attack. Belgian defensive preparations. On the 30th of July, the chief of the Belgian General Staff, proposed to implement a plan to counter a violation of Belgian territory by the German army, by assembling the field army astride the Geta River between Hannut, St. Trond, Telmont, Hammer and Mill. On the 1st of August the Belgians decided to place a division each in Liège and Namur, and on the 3rd of August the two fortresses were left to resist an invasion as best they could, while the rest of the field army protected Antwerp and waited for intervention by France and Britain, the other guarantors of Belgian neutrality. At Liège, Liège had the 3rd Division and the 15th Brigade of the 4th Division, which had arrived from High on the night of 5/6 August and increased the garrison to c. 30,000 men. Liège deployed the infantry against attacks from the east and south. Plan of attack: the terrain and fortresses at Liège favoured an attack by coup de main because the gaps between the forts had not been maintained and some areas were cut by deep ravines immune to bombardment by the fortress artillery. The General Staff assumed a Belgian garrison of 6,000 men in peacetime with c. 3,000 members of the Gardes Civiques. The plan required the 34th Brigade to attack between Forts Lonson and Pontis, the 27th Brigade to break through between the Meuse and Fort of Aignay on the east bank, the 14th Brigade to penetrate between Forts of Aignay and Fleurus, and the 11th Brigade between Fleurus and Chaudfontaine. As the 38th and 43rd Brigades attacked between the Auxerre and Meuse, the 2nd Cavalry Corps was to envelop the fortress and assemble to the northwest. The terrain made an advance across country impracticable, so the attackers were to form marching columns behind vanguards, with slung rifles only to be used on officers' orders. White armbands and a password were to be used for recognition. The outer fortress defences were to be bypassed in the dark so that Liège could be attacked during the day.